This inner process is my focus today, the communal work that helps build us into a people who labor together for justice and peace in the way of Christ. Within this community, again, we may be squeamish about the word enemy. And I'm not suggesting we start using it all the time to describe each other, playing up our conflicts and nourishing our animosities. But the truth is that within the church, as within families and other friendships, we will have differences. We will have oppositions. We will be low-key enemies at points. When we don't tell the truth about this reality, sometimes our hurts and our tensions come out sideways. Churches are notorious for this. So I'm suggesting that our very first step is honesty. We will disagree. We will hurt each other. This isn't the end of the story. So category 1, the preparatory disciplines. The very first habit I'd like to suggest to help us build beloved community is a habit of honest self-examination and curiosity about other people. Instead of papering over the surface of my feelings and interactions, this means getting quiet and still and curious and thinking through my relationships. Whom do I find difficult and why? Who sets me on edge and why? Again, the point here isn't to amplify conflict, but to be a little bit more self-aware about interpersonal dynamics. It might be useful to write these down in a safe place because this kind of processing, it takes time. Sometimes these conflicts they're not subtle at all. Sometimes we get into shouting matches. Sometimes we find ourselves in obvious factions, pro-vax and anti-vax, NDP and Sask Party, sleep training and attachment parenting, eco-vegans and cattle farmers. If we ever think these are purely modern problems, I love the dramatic reimagining of Romans in the book Romans Disarmed, which reminds us that the early church's dietary conflicts that we read about in the New Testament were really deep-seated, heartfelt convictions, and they had to work very hard to work through these together. The second preparatory discipline I'll suggest is a direct response to Jesus' teaching in Matthew. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. There are lots of ways to pray for enemies. I think God can handle our honesty and is unlikely to stop causing the sun to rise on the evil just because we ask for it. But the specific kind of prayer I'd like to recommend for conflicts within our family of faith is loving kindness prayer. Practice, I'll suggest, is naming common commitments, common values, and shared boundaries. Again, this is a particularly useful practice for conversations where there aren't big power imbalances. I'm thinking here of a more level playing field. What can we lay as a groundwork of shared life? Here are some examples. We commit to seeking Jesus together. We are committed to the good of our community. We are committed to staying in relationship even if we continue to disagree. The second in-the-moment practice I'll suggest is around self-regulation. We are not just ideas and theologies, but bodies, made in God's image, in the overflow of God's love. In Western cultures, and sometimes especially in Christian cultures, some of us have been brought up to dissociate pretty fully from our suspicious flesh. I certainly was. But ignoring our embodiment in conflict is ignoring a source of insight and connection. Hilary McBride's book, The Wisdom of Your Body, is a really lovely entry point if you're wanting to learn more about this dynamic. So much could be said, but for now, I'll suggest just a few concrete ideas. First off, in difficult conversations, it helps to have both feet planted on the floor, connecting your body to the stability of the earth. It helps to notice your own bodily sensations, to take a moment. Is your heart racing? Is your skin clammy? Are you clenching your jaw? Can you take some quiet breaths? Can you lower your shoulders and drop your tongue to the bottom of your mouth? I heard a neuroscientist say recently, you can't stay mad at someone with your tongue on the bottom of your mouth. Can you put your hand on your chest or your belly and remind yourself that you're safe? Attending to our bodies in these really simple but practical ways during conflict can calm our nervous systems and help us stay engaged, keeping us from kind of tuning out or blowing up, which short circuits the discussion process. And I think the more we do it, the easier it becomes. It's a practice, and it's one worth trying in our daily lives. We are our meat, and our muscles and bones and blood are part of what we bring to discernment and relationships. Redeeming the divide between our minds and our bodies can help us redeem some of the divides between each other as we become more adept at self-regulating and remaining present to the work of conversation. The first is to build a church culture of trust by choosing not to gossip. Gossiping is not the same thing as talking with trusted friends because we are relational and we need to process healthily. But after a difficult discussion, our goal should not be to retrench into factions and reestablish our polarized groups by playing up an us versus them dynamic. Our goal should be to honestly unpack what happened with just one or maybe a handful of wise conversation partners. And this goal, again, is to build a church culture of trust so we can all trust each other to have hard conversations without having our perspectives later mocked or spread around or used against us or distorted through a grown-up game of telephone. Again, the second practice after a difficult conversation is a return to the preparatory practice of honest self-reflection, which leads to the possibility of apologizing when necessary and forgiving when necessary. I don't know about you, but I have not witnessed very many apologies and forgiveness in conflicts within churches. Maybe you're all pros and you have a sparklingly healthy church culture. I hope that's the case. But I think many of us find apologizing and forgiving very difficult. The irony, of course, is that Jesus teaches so clearly and frequently on the power of forgiveness. Developing a culture, again, a culture of trust, in which we can admit to each other when we have been wrong, whether about our ideas or in our conduct toward each other, in big and I think perhaps even more crucially small ways, is, I think, one of the most powerful ways we can embody the love of the Spirit within the bonds of Christ. Apology and forgiveness doesn't mean papering over reality or leaving aside accountability. And in fact, I can apologize for my tone or my attitude without letting go of my kind of position. It's not a zero-sum game. But in genuine, regular encounters of apology and forgiveness, something changes. In a marriage, in a family, in a friendship, and in a church. When we risk apologizing and forgiving, we confirm the ongoing nature of our discernment together, our commitment to continued relationship over time and discussion and debate.